Hello, everyone, and welcome to the M.A.S.C Equality Virtual Summit. I'm Haley Sahar, and I want to first start by saying thank you for being a part of this summit and placing your time and efforts towards supporting the LGBTQ+ community. If there's anything this past year has taught us, it's that taking responsibility for each other's welfare is essential if we want to successfully navigate through these difficult and challenging times. So once again, thank you for being here. This 5-day summit consists of experts from various sectors of the industry brought together to discuss the difficult challenges that uniquely affect the Black LGBTQ+ community. Topics range from COVID-19 to housing, civil liberties, employment, mental wellness, violence, and policy. This is a solution-driven conversation, a first step of many towards eradicating the systematic oppression directed towards the Black LGBTQ+ community. And now I want to introduce you to Dr. Kimmick. She is the co-founder of Black Mental Wellness Corp and our esteemed host.
Hi, I am Dr. Nicole K-Mac, President and CEO of Black Mental Wellness Corp. And today I have the pleasure of hosting day one of the M.A.S.C Summit, where we will talk about mental health, exploring issues and experiences ranging from childhood trauma, exclusion, and violence. I will introduce you to our lovely panelists who will answer some questions, and then there'll be some time at the end where we will take some questions from social media as well. Next, I have the pleasure of introducing Chevelle Moss-Savage. Chevelle Moss-Savage is a licensed psychotherapist and the founder of Helping Everyone Accept and Adapt to Life, or HEAL LLC. She has more than 20 years of experience working in mental health as a therapist, group facilitator, trainer, instructor, and case manager. She holds a master's degree in human services clinical counseling from Lincoln University, a certified grief counseling specialist, human services board certified practitioner, and certified clinical trauma professional. Chevelle is an international thought leader who has been recognized for her amazing work to further social justice and equity for LGBTQIA+ folks. Chevelle's plethora of experience has been acquired both in higher education and in the private sector. Although she is a licensed clinician, she is also versed in promoting diversity and multicultural awareness through intersectionality training with hopes of eradicating stigmas related to mental health, ability status, faith, traditions, or LGBTQ+ identities. Chevelle lives in Old Saybrook, Connecticut with her spouse, and pre-COVID-19, they enjoyed traveling, hosting theme parties, and spending times with friends and family. Welcome, Chevelle. Sounds like you
Thank you.
Pre-COVID.
Listen, I loved pre-COVID. I'm navigating post-COVID, hopefully soon, right?
Okay, Chevelle, for you, could you please explain the meaning of HEAL, H-E-A-L, and its mission?
Sure. So HEAL stands for Helping Everyone Accept and Adapt to Life. So originally, it was created because over 18 years ago, I lost my mom suddenly. And so when I was navigating my own mental wellness journey, I took a certification in grief and bereavement. And so when I decided to initially start, it was in 2009 that I created HEAL, and it actually stood for Helping Everyone Accept and Adapt to Loss. And so because when I got my license, I was going to do this big thing and just do grief therapy and bereavement and all of that. And so in grad school, I realized it's more than just loss. There are all kinds of things that we have to deal with. And so now it stands for Helping Everyone and Accept and Adapt to Life. And in 2015, we rebranded. And the reason why I created HEAL was because, as I mentioned, my mom passed suddenly. And so I didn't recognize what I was dealing with. I was dealing with this large sense of grief, as well as my son, and just to understand how to navigate that. And so when I was engaging in my own mental wellness journey, I found people who could affirm me being either Black or affirm me being queer, but not both. So the reason, and that was a struggle for me, right? And so I said, so either you could affirm me being Black, and that was like the Black therapist, but didn't understand the dynamic of what queer relationships look like, right? Yeah. And then you could affirm me being white. I mean, not white, Lord have mercy. You could affirm me being, I'm not white. You could affirm me being, queer, and those were the white therapists, but just didn't understand what some of the common things and the cultural aspects that I have to navigate. Like, I would have to educate my therapist on what a big mama was, right? Whereas in the Black therapist was like, oh, I know what a big mama is. That's your grandmama, right? And so those kinds of things is why I created HEAL. So I said, if I am having that struggle around finding someone who I can bring my whole authentic intersecting identities to, and then other folks are as well. So that's why I created HEAL. So you can be your most wonderful unicorn, affirming self, and Miss Chevelle will affirm you all in all the ways. So that's why we created HEAL.
That's beautiful. I love when you can like take those pieces of your own journey and like pour it into your purpose and what you're doing, and creating those safe spaces, which are so important as we're talking about stigma and different identities, and being able to show up in therapy as your whole self. You don't want to be educating somebody to do
No, exactly, right? Talking about, I'm going to a barbecue. It's a cookout. Stop it.
So true. I actually also wanted to kind of make note of Chevelle's, mental wellness journey. I love that. I love that. That's honestly, it's such a beautiful, eloquent way to be able to hold space for however which way that looks, right? That's fantastic. Thank you.
And I also want to say, I love, if you can name it, you can tame it. I'm like, wait a minute. Listen, I will honor you and say that's where it came from, but I'm going to start using it.
That's what I was going to add. And a lot of people, like, oftentimes people don't even know what it is to name it. And so you're creating that space where you can say, hey, this is trauma. This is how it impacts you. These are the different types of things that are trauma, because oftentimes people will normalize pain and experiences and just think, well, this is the way it has to be. Right. And so you're saying things like, let's name it, let's show up as your authentic self, let me help you on your mental wellness journey. You're creating that expansion for other people. I feel inspired. I'm like, okay, let me take you to the therapy room. I feel inspired.
Fantastic.
Good. So Chevelle, for you, as a culture, there is a hesitation to pursue therapy. Do you find the resistance stronger when it comes to Black LGBTQ?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so a lot of times when I'm coming into the room, I'm talking about things that folks really have a lot of ingrained stigma around, right? We're talking about LGBTQIA identities as well as mental wellness. So we're talking about and trying to modge podge those things together. So if you're navigating a lot of stuff, and then there perhaps is some internalized stuff going on with you, and you don't know what that is. And just like what Deja said, like, we normalize pain a lot of times. If you've never actually been around a situation that has been healthy, then your unhealthy dynamic in which you're engaging seems normal, right? Until you actually start engaging in some healthy practices, incorporating some boundaries and things of that nature. So I think as a Black community, we have this superhero, or have been raised in some ways, and I don't want to make a blanket statement, like a superhero syndrome, right? Or the strong person syndrome. And I mean, I can go into reasons why we've had to when it comes to being an enslaved people, but I'm not going to get into that right now. So anyway, at the end of the day, I understand what that looks like. And it also, because we are such a people that has such a rich history when it comes to faith traditions. So you don't need to go to therapy. You need to pray it away, right? And then on top of that, if you have the nerve to be a lesbian, or then that's French for lesbian. It's not. I made that up. But anyway, so if you happen to be lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, oh Lord, and let's not talk about non-binary. That's a whole lot, right? Then if you happen to be all those things, and you also have a strong faith tradition, then they're going to tell you that you shouldn't belong, and they're going to vilify you. So why? And then if you, on top of that, go get some help, then that must be a demon in you. Something's going on. So there are a lot of dynamics that we have to navigate. And I think people who don't look like us, right, non-black and brown folks, they are taught from the beginning, it's support, it's help, go get that. We are not. And I think it goes right back to what Deja said and mentioned about, like, when we grow up, what are those messages that we're receiving, right? And so when we receive those messages, then that means that I don't need help. I don't need support. And so that dynamic on top of you're Black, right? Like, I look at myself, for example, I identify as Black. I'm a Black cis queer femme, right? And then on top of that, you can't see me, but I'm also a little chunky, all right? So I'm dealing with size, I'm dealing with all the things that I have to show up in the world. So if I can't come in and feel comfortable in all of my identities that you can see, and then there's some things that you don't know about me, that I'm a mom, I'm a gaga, I'm a wife, right? Gaga, Swahili for grandmother. I'm all those things. So with the surface stuff, if I don't feel supported and affirmed when I come into your office and I don't see literature that has like Black and brown people's face on it, then I'm not going to feel comfortable sharing things with you, right? So those are all, did I answer the question, Dr. Cameron? I know, like, I go all around, but at the end of the day, those are some of the things that create stigma. Those are some of the things that make us not want to seek support and help.
You definitely answered it. You went in. I think it's different points that are important, because it's not just one identity, and it's not just one stigma that you're fighting, or these negative thoughts that may come from outsiders, and all of that informs how you feel, how you show up in therapy. And I think it just all goes back to the importance of those safe spaces that people can show who you are, and with therapy work to like figure out who you are and not make you do the work. But
I love that little piece. I was just going to say, when you have an identity that is kind of predicated in secrecy, right? Like, queerness in the Black community, like, oh, don't talk about that, right? Or even, back to that kind of previous point of our conversation about trauma, right? Like that sort of cultural view of, like, family business, it's not everybody else's business. We don't tell everybody else. And so to your point, I love that, it's kind of like there are stigmas that are like particularly affected, I guess, or effective for those different kind of like spaces of our identity, right? So I'm just receiving it all. Thank you.
But Deja, you have a very valid point when you talk about the veil of secrecy. So that's also something that we don't, right? You don't talk outside of the house. Do you know how many folks that I see who identify as Black and brown, and a lot of their trauma is from their bio parents, right? And so, but they don't want to talk about it. Even to me as a Black human, I mean, I understand, because even when I was on my mental wellness journey, I struggled with talking about some of the things that affected me as a child, because I had to say something negative about my mom. And that's not something that we talk about in the Black community. You don't talk about your mama, your daddy, your brother. You don't talk about any of that. So that's why domestic violence is prevalent. That's why abuse is prevalent. That's why, sexual predication is prevalent. All of these things are prevalent because we are raised to keep it a secret. And so when I was raising my son, I told him, listen, if anyone does anything that is inappropriate, even mom or dad, you need to let somebody know. And so when I removed that stigma of, no, you can tell everybody else, but if I do something, don't, then I knew that he would, if he felt comfortable like dropping down on mama, then he would feel comfortable going to drop it down on everybody else, right? And see, that's another thing. Like, if you were going to someone who identified as white, when you say drop it down, they'd be like, well, what is that? That means telling the tea.
Right, absolutely. But, restoring that agency, creating that safety to give people, to
Yeah.
amplify that part of people's experiences is one of
Mm-hmm.
those, like, one of those pieces that you want to kind of like stress to people on the other side. Like, just get into
Mm-hmm.
the, just get into the office, quote unquote, right? Just get into a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
And you're able to really
Exactly.
see, like, the tangible effects of having those things that, you, Dr. Carmack, have mentioned, and you, Chevelle, have like kind of really illustrated for us here. Like, it's fantastic.
All right. So, Chevelle, when a person racism, if they choose to, there is someone to talk to. But if someone of color that is LGBTQ needs understanding, who do they turn to?
Wow. So talk about loaded questions, right, Adrian? So I think, oh my goodness, let's just talk about like what's going on now, right, with the current climate of the world. So on top of COVID, right, this unprecedented pandemic that we've never seen the likes of, and we thought was going to last maybe a month or two, and we're now in month 7, and probably it's going to go until January at least, right? So you have that, and then on top of that, and because we've had to shelter in place, we have been able to witness, unfortunately, a lot of violence on the Black community by people who are supposed to protect us, right? And so when all of those things happen, how do you navigate that? How do you navigate that? So one of the things that I noticed is that a lot of my colleagues in Connecticut, I'm originally from Virginia, and so you may hear an accent, you may not, right? I lived in Virginia for 48 years, and my spouse got a job in Connecticut, and so I migrated 2 years ago. But when you hear all of the things that we are having to navigate with the George Floyds, the Ahmaud Arbery, the Breonna Taylors, and all of that, and they started doing all of these forms, right, to help with mental health. But you know what they forgot about? They forgot to shout out Tony McDade. They forgot to shout out, and that's a trans man in Florida who lost his life, right, to police violence. They didn't actually shout him out, but they were saying the names of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and I think, to be honest with you, probably Breonna Taylor got Maj Podge in there because she happened to be right in between these men, right? So at the end of the day, I've noticed that they never honored trans or queer experiences when they were doing these mental health forms. And I said, now listen, we need to know the facts here, because Black Lives Matter, but you're doing hashtag Black Lives Matter. But do you realize the origin of the organization was created by 2 people who identify as queer? But we're not shouting out some of the people who are dying. We're not shouting out all of the trans women of color who are dying. Why are we not talking about that? That happened also during this national unrest. And so what do you do? What do you do? I mean, my caseload has increased. It is becoming increasingly hard because you trying to find someone that looks like you, who can understand what that looks like and what that experience is. Also, if you have people in your life who are close to you who don't look like you, it's okay for that relationship to kind of shift as well, because they're not putting a knee on the neck of a white person, right? They're not putting the knee of, the knee on the neck of someone who doesn't look like us. And I think the pandemic has forced us to kind of sit in this. And although we're experiencing secondary trauma from this, right? Based on all of the things, it is hard to figure out what that looks like. I know what I've done is that I've created like groups specifically for Black and brown people to process. And I am very intentional about this is just for Black and brown people, okay? Because a lot of times when people bring in allies, we as a people, sometimes Black and brown folks, don't even realize the labor that we're engaging in and having to take care of that white person, having to not want to say what we really want to say. I know I'm pissed I have a human, I'm a mother of a 28-year-old human who's going to be 29 next month. And he is dark skinned because colorism is real, right? So I am always on high alert that I'm going to get a call that he is not well or that he has transitioned from this life to the next. And so that in itself weighs so heavy on me as a Black mama, on top of also trying to support people who are navigating what we're dealing with. So it's hard. I say, first of all, everybody needs a therapist. And I'm not just saying it because I'm a therapist, right? Even if you don't have a chief complaint, you need to go in and just check in once a month just to get some stuff right, to have a process partner, right? So that's one of the things that I would definitely incorporate. And I've noticed that, and I'm sure probably Deja, you can adhere to this too, that people are reaching out because I'm a unicorn. There is not a lot, there is only one queer Black therapist in New London. That's where my practice is. You know who that is? Me. Me. So people who, so I have, Black and brown people wanting to come to me, and I'm full right now, but they also want that component of what that identity and of what I can understand and what that looks like, right? When they have to navigate conversations around not only racism that they're experiencing at their job, but also racism that they may be experiencing if their partner doesn't look like them, right? And it's a biracial relationship and what that looks like, and how people say, I get it. You can't get it because you are not in my skin. I don't get to take this off. This stays with me all the time, right? So the only thing I can suggest, Dr. Kamek, is that folks just really need to get a support system if you don't have access or resources to therapy, because that's the thing too, right? That sometimes we just don't have the resources to be able to afford therapy. And so if you don't, I would say really get a really good support system so that you can process it out and be okay with the feelings. Feel the feelings. It's all right. It's okay to be pissed. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be enraged. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to be anxious. It's okay to have a lot of trepidation. That is all right. All of those feelings are normal based on what we're dealing with right now.
Thank you for that. You something that stood out to me in terms of thinking about, like, as we're talking about these racial injustices and who we sort of highlight. I remember this summer, like, even the movement shifted and saying all Black lives matter. Like, we don't get to choose who. But it made me think about even the therapy example of, if I don't see myself there, where do you go? So when you're talking about stigma or lack of support, when you don't see you represented, even when we're talking about brutality and whose lives are worth fighting for, what does that do to people? And so we have to be careful that we're not perpetuating more stigma and isolating people from that.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I look like I wanted to like pounce, huh? But no, I mean, I honestly, I just want to like sort of amplify just everything that you guys are saying and talk about, to your point, definitely a unicorn, definitely. and it's sort of like these identities and this kind of work in this moment, but I also feel like it's been, from my experience, it's also been so many people making sort of decisions to define what their Blackness or queerness means to them, right? And like determining that is important for them, right? I need a space to show up as my most authentic self, all of myself, because it does not serve me, right? To kind of like parcel out my identity in this type of relationship, right? Like I feel like it's unfortunate, to your point, that many barriers exist in general, but it's like, for the people who actually do get connected or find that safety or what have you, they are, amplifying and like lifting up these things and saying, this is what's important to me because my experience, this is my lived experience. It's valid. Mm-hmm. I deserve to be affirmed in that. And that's been, one of those, not necessarily a bright spot, but it is a source of validation for me in the work, because it is an incredibly difficult time for all of us, even when we show up at our jobs too, right? So I just wanted to like amplify and also just throw that little season on there to that point.
So we are coming up on, this time just flew by. So we have time for one more question. I feel like some of these questions we have discussed. I like to remix it, but I like to end on a positive note because I feel like we've touched on so many important topics, like things that you all were saying. I feel like we could have separate conversations just about like the subset of a conversation. Um, about all that you sort of talked about today, and even as a psychologist, as a therapist, like I'm thinking about my own work and how can I use this to inform what I do. So as we're like coming up on the questions, I just wanted to ask you all, like, where do we go from here? How do we, if you're in the LGBTQ plus community, like what are your next steps? If you're a family member or a friend, what do you do to support and make sure that you're providing that safe space so that the people connected to you can show up as their whole authentic selves? Therapists, I don't know, like just where do we go from here? What can we take away from this discussion?
Chevelle, would you like to start? I can go second. So I started the conversation to begin with.
Well, I think right now, one thing that if we're going to end on something positive, we really need to center joy, to be honest with you, because a lot of times that's really what we have left, right? So whatever we're doing, we need to center joy. So that could mean self-care. That could mean hanging with friends. That could mean making time to journal. That could mean making time to take a walk. That could mean spending time with loved ones. All of those things are important and imperative in self-care, because one of the things that I love about self-care is that it is not self-indulgent. What my most favoriteest person, Audre Lorde, has the quote, and I love that self-care is not indulgent. It is actually not it is not self-sacrifice. It is an act of political warfare. Imagine if we as a people recognize that in order to take care of ourselves, it is an act of political warfare, because we're out here fighting, right? Just trying to survive and live. So at the end of the day, what I've noticed and what I try to also make sure I incorporate when I'm talking with my clients, whenever we end, I said, what are you going to do this week to take care of yourself? I said, and listen, and I need receipts. So I need you to come back and tell me what you did. Not like, oh yeah, I didn't. Nope, I need video, I need a picture, and it needs to be date stamped. I need something, because that's the only way you're going to be able to survive. A lot of times as people who are caregivers, as well as people who are in the helping professions, we will do something that I think I like to put it as like sainthood or be a martyr. Well, if I don't, who will? Listen. One of the things that I also talk about is airplane survival rules. When you fly, the flight attendant tells you to put on your mask first. So if you're giving, and you don't have anything to fill you up, what's going to be left? There's an empty shell. How are you going to help anyone, right? So as helping professionals, I think that I have had to really incorporate self-care and I do it without any guilt, because at the end of the day, the work that we do, and Deja knows this, and I'm sure you do, Dr. Comic, as well, the work that we do is hard. And in this day and time, and we're in an unprecedented time, we have to take care of ourselves and encourage our clients and the people that we care about to also take care of themselves. So when you say, where do we go from here? Self-care is necessary. It should be actually an act of everyday thing. And self-care can be something as simple as taking a multivitamin, right? A lot of times people think of these grandiose things. Oh, my self-care plan has to be this and that. It can be taking a break after 10 minutes of reading, or getting up and walking, or drinking your water intake, or eating a balanced diet. Something as simple as that to keep the body flowing. So that's what I would say, where we would go from here. And also, if you don't have a paid friend, that's what I call a therapist. If you don't have you a paid friend, you need to get you a paid friend, okay? Because listen, if you have nothing else, you need to get somebody who can listen to you with an unbiased opinion and provide support and resources and tools and techniques for you to live your most best authentic self.
Love that.
I was going to say that's so incredibly well said. The sort of maybe the one maybe dash that I would add to that is maybe can even be maybe conceptualized as the component or like secondary, and that's boundaries. It does not cost a thing to set a limit in your life as to what you are comfortable with, what you're not. right? What you need and the fact that that's important. So back to that previous point of, developing a supportive community or an affirming community or what have you, when you get signals that that community, whomever you have turned to, or this conversation or relationship is not that, you can make a different decision. You can say like, no, I can't talk about this right now. Or it is 7 o'clock on a Wednesday and that's when I take my bath. So I'm going to do that, right? So I just kind of thinking about it from that perspective too, that you set your limits, you make decisions about what it is that you can handle and what you can't. And there is nothing to feel guilty about when you do that.
So this is Chad Anderson from the Faces Agency. The first question we have is for Chevelle, and this is coming from Adam32. The question is, how important is it to have a safe space or a loving, supporting network after transition?
Oh, it's extremely important. As a matter of fact, a lot of times you are not even able to qualify for to get the procedure done, right? The gender affirming procedures, unless you have the proper aftercare. And then also, so that's from a medical standpoint. And then also from a emotional standpoint, it's a lot. You're going through a major change, right? And so although this is creating an affirming environment for you, as well as making your body aligned with what's going on up here, that's awesome. But also, it may also bring up some other feelings that you need support with. So I say definitely, if you have a partner or if you have family that is supported, and family also can be chosen, right? It doesn't have to be bio family, and that's all right. And then another component is that hopefully you will continue to see a therapist during your transition for anything that may pop up that you want to talk about and flesh out with. So I definitely would probably suggest, and if you're at that point where you've already transitioned or that you've gone through some transitional procedures, then you probably already have a therapist that is providing you the resources that you need from that component. Because if you don't, I would definitely say you would need to get someone who specializes in the gender identities and things of that nature.
That's a great answer. So the next question is for Chevelle, and this is coming from Charlotte209. And the question is, my experience from childhood were unhealthy, to say the least. I am thinking about facing my abusers and showing forgiveness. Would you suggest this approach to gain healthy, to really gain healing? So once again, my experience from childhood were unhealthy, to say the least. I am thinking about facing my abusers and showing forgiveness. Would you suggest this approach to gain healing?
I think it really is on what you're trying to get out of what is the end result of the conversation, right? So if you are trying to get an apology or some type of closure, and I would just encourage you that it may not come. They may not even acknowledge that there was any type of abuse that occurred. If you say that you still need to have that conversation to gain healing, I would encourage that you work with someone who is a strong support system and you figure out how to best work through that scenario. So if you were coming to see me, we would do some role playing about what that would look like, right? And then we could come up with some tools and techniques to ground you and make you feel and get you to your center of calmness, because that's a major thing. That's a major thing. And so I would encourage when you're having a conversation around that, first of all, what do you want to gain out of the conversation? Do you want them to just apologize, or do you want to just name that this happened, right? And if there was a veil of secrecy, maybe in that. So the first thing would be, what is the purpose of the conversation? And then from there, we would create a plan to best support you and your mental wellness, because that's a major thing that you would have to incorporate.
Thank you very much. That's all the questions that we have thus far. So Dr. Kamek, you can take it back.
Well, I guess this concludes our wonderful discussion today as we talked about mental health and exploring issues related to experiences ranging from childhood, exclusion, and violence. I feel like I learned a lot, and I learned, I hope you all took something away. You had to have gotten something from this. And I guess I would just ask the question if people wanted to follow up or ask you any questions after, do you have any social media they should follow, or what's the best way that people can learn more about the work that you do, because you're having such an impact on the community? And I know you're a unicorn and you're already full, but people may still need to reach out to
you. Deja, do you want to go first?
You're so kind. Yes. So I've not quite yet stepped up my social media game, but all of my contact information can be found in my bio page associated with Mind Path Care Centers. So if you were to just, straight to the staff directory or the search bar, you can type my name in, Deja Maynor, and it's going to come up there. And you can reach out to me via email or anything that's listed there.
Okay. So I am on the Gram of Insta as well as the Book of Faces. And my website address is www.heal-virginia.org. And then my Instagram handle is heal_HEAL_LLC. And my Book of Faces is at HEAL LLC as well. So one of the things that I have been doing to create space for people to still be connected is that I've been doing a thing called Thoughts on a Thursday. And so I do 59-second videos, and we have different topics that we discuss, like boundaries, self-care, respite, motivation, things of that nature. So if you go there and you follow me every Thursday, and the one I just completed was, not patience, longevity and patience. There are all kinds of topics, and so I pick one topic a week and give some information about it, and then also challenge viewers to incorporate some of those things into their lives.
Well, thank you both. Again, this was a great discussion. If you have additional questions, they have told you how to reach out, so do it. And then I hope that you all would join us for day 2 of the summit. All week long, we'll be rolling out additional speakers and addressing a range of topics. So we'll see you tomorrow.